All right, hi everyone. This is our first chapter lecture. This is going to be over Chapter 1, Introduction to Operations Management. I want to preface this by saying that these lectures are going to have a smaller, shorter version of the PowerPoint that is provided by the author of the textbook, by the publisher. So I do put up the full PowerPoint presentation as a file you can download if you want to go through it that way to get the highlights of the chapter, maybe help you focus where you're planning to study the most in preparation for the quizzes and for the eventual exam. There is going to be a lot of material in the chapter or chapters that is not covered on this lecture. I'm going to hit the major points, so to speak, but please know that anything in the chapter entirely is fair game on the quizzes. You could encounter anything from the chapter material. So that's another reason why they're open book, open notes. You can make your notes based on the learning objectives, the bolded, headers throughout the chapter, however you think is best. And keep in mind, when you take the quiz, I give you 2 attempts at it. So if you take one attempt and you don't get a perfect score, you're welcome to give it a second try. I encourage you to take 2 attempts at every quiz because the higher of those 2 grades is what counts. So let's get on with Chapter 1, Intro to Operations Management. So what's operations mean? It's the part of the business that actually is responsible for producing goods or services. That definition is important. It'll come back up probably on the quiz. But the idea is it's the core aspect of the business that does what the business exists to do, right? It's not the only part of the business that generates profit. You might have investments that you have with your finance team or whatnot, but it's the driving force of the business. So you either produce goods or you produce service. And then so the operations management team is managing those systems or processes that make the goods or services or provide services. So why would we study it? Because if you understand the operations department, then you understand its role within any organization. So whatever business you go into, even if you don't go into the operations team, you plan on going into an accounting job, finance job, marketing job, right? Those are all important systems within any organization. And so by understanding operations and also by understanding those other departments, you get a really well-rounded view of how business is set up. That's why in the core of our business core here at NSU, you have those principles or intro classes in the core, regardless of what you're majoring in. If you're majoring in marketing, accounting, finance, management, whatever it is, in the business college, you take those classes because you really need to understand how the other systems and departments in an organization works to truly understand your role in it. So every aspect of business is affected or affects operations, right? So this is what I was just saying. All these other service jobs and service departments are closely related. This last step, the importance of working with others, right? If you understand how anyone else's role works, you'll have a better understanding of how to communicate with them, how to build those relationships with them. So here's a view of the organization functions: marketing, operations, finance. Those are the 3 core elements of a business. Now you have supplementary auxiliary functions as well. You've got your human resources team, right? You've got your other support departments, IT. You might have security if it's that kind of place, right? That probably falls under operations. But you have a lot of other roles in the organization that don't necessarily fall under one of these 3. But these are the main 3 driving forces of the business. You can see how they kind of overlap. Finance overlaps with operations in the budgeting of your department. They provide the funds that you need for promotions or for expanse or for new projects. The marketing team helps provide the data to decide what demand is out there for what products, helps you figure out your lead time, and to do analysis on your competition. Because if you don't know how you stand in the market, then it's really hard to make proper decisions on where to go as a company. So I talked about good or service, good versus service. As far as the operations team, what they do. Goods refer to the physical items. And in today's day and age, really, it expands into digital items, right? So like the textbook, if you have a digital copy of your textbook, that's still a good, even though it's not a tangible item. What we traditionally think of as good is a physical, tangible item, but nonetheless, it also includes all the raw materials, parts, and the sub-assemblies that go into those final products. So it's not just the final product itself. Some examples they list here is automobile, computer, oven, shampoo, right? Those are all things you could go somewhere and purchase, drive away with, or drive home with, or drive in, right? Services then are the intangible items that provides either a combination of time, location, form, or psychological value. The examples listed here would be getting an education, getting a haircut, traveling on an airplane, getting legal advice from a lawyer, right? But typically, a business is neither purely service or good-based, right? You have a crossover point and a percentage of your business that's focused on producing goods, and then also there's services, right? So some examples are automobile assembly, right? You produce the automobile, but you also sell it, right? So that industry has the car lots that sell it to you, or online stores that sell it to you. Home remodeling. Well, when you remodel a home, let's say you're doing a kitchen, you've got cabinets, you've got appliances, you might have to take out a wall, you might have to put in structural things, you might be painting, right? A lot of labor involved. So the labor and the design of it and all that, that's the service, but you're still buying all those goods as well, right? There's the all of the materials that go into that. Those are the goods, the labor is the service. Same with retail. Somebody's selling you an item and you're selling you a good. So that business exists in both worlds. Computer repair. You have a computer repaired, you're probably going to need replacement parts. Some kind of software installation still counts as a good, even though it's digital. You go to a restaurant, you're provided service from the server, right? You go to the bar, you're provided service from the bartender, right? But then the good is that food or beverage. Songwriting, you produce the record, album, and you sell it digitally or physical copies of it. So crossover. Surgery and teaching. Okay, so this class, we have a required textbook. There's a good involved there. And then teaching is the service, right? So as you're managing your operations team, you can view it as a series of transformations. You take all your inputs, you transform them in some way into outputs. So land, labor, capital, meaning money, information, data, analytics, all of that goes in. You use it somehow, and then your output is the good or service that you provide your customer. And all along the way, you're measuring it, you're getting feedback, you're making sure the system's in control. What they have here at the bottom says that you can look at the standard you've set and at previous data to see if you need to correct anything along the way, if something's out of control. Here's some examples of the transformation process. So we've got two examples, food processor and hospital. The food processor, you've got a series of inputs like raw vegetables, energy, equipment. You turn metal sheets into cans. You have labor to pack, you have labeling, and at the end of it, you take all those vegetables and you package them and can them, and you have canned vegetables that go on a store shelf. Hospital, you've got a series of inputs. You've got doctors, nurses, medical supplies, labs. You examine patients, you give them medication, perform surgery, whatever the case is. At the end, your output is that you have treated patients. So series of inputs that are transformed into outputs. Here's some typical differences. These aren't going to be 100%, right? So the typical output of a good is something tangible, something you can actually physically touch, right in front of you, right? You buy something off a store shelf, it's tangible. Intangible is that that feeling you get, the emotional response, whatever the case is, that the service provides you, right? If you go out and you go to a restaurant, you have a pleasant experience with the food being delivered to you, not having to make it yourself. They're kind to you, they're responsive. They're coming by to make sure that your food is good, that your drink's always refilled and all that. That's the service they provide, right? But you're not leaving there with that tangible item. That's the food, that's the good. The service was what the server provided to you. Customer contact, low for a good, high for a service, right? The good just exists on a shelf until they buy it, right? Labor content, it's, the labor goes into, I mean, that's all it is when you're in a service industry job, right? You are providing the service. It's all about your amount of labor you have. If you are a convenience store, you might have one or two clerks working the whole store, right? If you're a car lot, you have tons of sales persons all over the place, right? So it just depends on what kind of business you are, how much labor you need, how many employees you need in order to operate that. Measure productivity. We're going to cover this in chapter 2 quite a bit, but the idea that if you are producing a good, it's really easy to tell how productive you are. You just take your output and divide it by your inputs, and see, well, how many units per hour did I produce, right? Or your, how many did I do in this week, or whatever the case is. It's really easy to measure productivity. I've got an hour, I've sold, this much money worth of goods this year. I can look at, compare that to year over year to see our labor cost low, whatever the case is, right? It's easy because you can quantify that very, very simply by just looking at the information you have available. Whereas to measure productivity in a service job, it's really hard to tell. Is somebody being productive or not, right? You see someone at their desk and they're not typing anything on their computer. Are they being productive, right? Are they brainstorming and mapping it all out and making sure that they have it mapped out A to Z before they get it going, right? You don't know that productivity exists there. Is a server, joking with their customers or not, right? Are they being productive during that? Maybe it's helping them with tips, but also maybe it's helping them, sell more at the end, dessert, drink, whatever the case is, right? Appetizer. So it's hard to tell how productive someone's being. Often we rely on surveys or some sort of customer feedback for this, which is very subjective. And it really, just because somebody walks away with a good experience doesn't mean they're going to rate somebody high. Same thing, you walk away with a bad experience because your food was cold and then you rate the server low, right? Was that server, how do you rate that? It's difficult, very subjective. Opportunity to correct problems before delivery, right? If you have a product come off the assembly line, you can investigate it and see, oh, okay, we should not send this to our retail stores or distribution centers because it's defective, right? You have a lot of opportunity to along the way to correct those problems. Whereas service is happening in the moment with the customer. If somebody misspeaks or gives wrong information, very little opportunity to correct that before you've given that to the customer. Let's just move along. So the scope of operations management. So if you are an ops manager, you have a lot of different functions that you have to fill. There's a lot of interrelated activities. Here's some examples of them. Forecasting, capacity planning. So figuring out how much demand there's going to be various months, having accurate forecasting, figuring out what you need for production capacity. How much can we produce per day, per week, per year, and matching that to your demand properly. Where should we locate our facilities? Do we get a better, our costs lower here if we centrally locate because we're sending units all over the country, or do we have some sort of tax break here, or whatever the case is? Reasons why we might locate one place versus another. Scheduling of employees, scheduling of deliveries, motivating your employees, a lot of different roles. So it's not just a simple, okay, we're going to cover this task and this task only when you're an operations manager or director. The decision-making process relies on the who, what, when, where, why, how type questions you should ask yourself. What would be, what resources do we need? How much do we need of it? When do we need them? When should we schedule it? Where will the work be done, right? Your location analysis, or where within the department are we going to locate or not in the department, where in the facilities are we going to locate our equipment? How will we design our product or service? How will we do the work? How will we allocate our resources and prioritize? And finally, who will do the work? One thing that can aid us in the decision-making process is by using an abstract tool called modeling. So modeling is a simplification of something. If you've ever seen Zoolander, you have the model of the hospital for children. What is this? A hospital for ants, right? So that would be a physical model, a miniature airplane, miniature model of the thing you're planning to build. It lets you view it to see, does this look appropriate before we build the full size, whatever it is, right? Car. If you ever see a car commercial where they show, the car being, sculpted out of clay or what have you, right? You've made a physical model of it, and they're in there, looking, okay, are these lines the way we want them? Is the shape of the windshield and the bumpers and all that, visually attractive? That's how we want to make it beforehand. Schematics, so your drawings, blueprints, mathematical models. This is some way to use math and quantification to optimize a solution. Inventory is one example they have here, but there's a number of different mathematical models that we're going to be using in this class. So this last one is going to be very important for us because we're going to basically be building some sort of mathematical model for every chapter after starting with chapter 2. What's a benefit of modeling? Well, they're usually easier to use and less expensive, right? I could build several automobiles before I decided how I liked the look, but that's going to be very costly. Or I could build a miniature version of it and tell that way. It increases the understanding of the problem because you can see what's working, what's not. You can see the finer details because it forces you to evaluate it from every angle as you're constructing that model. It also allows you to bring the power of math magic to bear on a problem. So, and that's important because if you can quantify it, it helps to tell approximately what costs, what profits you can expect from it. Now, there are a lot of limitations to modeling. One at the top here is that you might overvalue that mathematical quantitative information and ignore qualitative information such as managerial experience. Somebody's been in the industry a long time, they have a good feel for things, they're working in the interest of the organization. They've got maybe the ear of their customers, they've heard things, they know about various ebbs and flows, local things going on, and you're ignoring that at the emphasis of that quantitative. Well, this says we're going to make this much profit, and these other options say they'll only make that much profit, so we're going to choose this one. Well, hold on, because we have other reasons why we want to factor in, right? So if you over rely on the math, then you might end up making a bad decision. Also, it doesn't guarantee good decisions. We were going to deal with probabilities a lot, several of the chapters, and really you have to think that way. It's always a bit of a gamble when you invest a lot of money and time So just because you make the right decisions doesn't mean that you're going to get good results either, right? Figuring out whether or not you made a good decision should not be viewed as results oriented, right? I was in the casino industry for a long time, and I think of a hand of poker. If I get all my money in with 2 aces against a 7 deuce offsuit, and the other opponent happens to win, doesn't mean I didn't make a good decision there to put my money in when I was heavily favored to win. It didn't work out, but when you make that decision over a long period of time, if you're in that position over and over again, you are expected to profit on it. So the other downside of modeling is that you might misinterpret it. Sometimes the mathematical models require well-informed users to be in control of it, and if they are misunderstanding the outputs, then you might make bad decisions that way. Also, you might have typos in your formulas, or you might have bad data from your analysis team, and junk in, junk out, right? So there's no guarantee here, right? But it helps you make better decisions in general, but again, no guarantees. So quantitative approach just means that you're taking some sort of mathematical approach to arrive at an optimal solution. Often works together with qualitative approaches. So you still have to factor other things in. I mean, this is why we still have humans for now managing our operations team, and not just calculators. Although some businesses tend to run that way. There's still a human involved, right? So you have to take some sort of qualitative input into account. All right, metrics. This is ways we can manage and control, making sure that a system is in compliance. It's running optimally, and so we can look at a lot of values, figures, and evaluate whether productivity is high enough, profits are where they should be, costs are where they should be. And here's a series of various things that we use as metrics. And then let's talk trade-offs. A trade-off is just when you give up something in exchange for something else. So one of our chapters deals a few chapters deal with carrying of inventory and just how costly that is. If I produce something and it sits in my stored inventory for a while, there's a cost associated with that, either because of the actual space required to store it. Maybe it's a perishable good that requires electricity, cooling in order to keep it from spoiling, or just the fact that it cost me money to make that, and until I recoup my expense, over time, there's a value to that. So we associate a value to the carrying costs, and every month that has a cumulative effect on total cost. But what if we carried a little bit more so that we can get better customer service, or that we don't have a stock out? And so finding that equilibrium where it gives you the highest customer service, lowest cost, is what's important there, right? You're going to give up some customer service for lower costs, right? You're not going to always have it in stock, maybe, because that's going to cost you so much money that your business isn't profitable. You carry 20 of each color of an option, right? But really, the purple and the orange one weren't very popular. The red and blue is what you should have carried more of, or whatever the case is, right? There's a qualitative approach there, right, to see which one you should be carrying, and can you get the item in time, et cetera, et cetera. Is it okay to be out of stock sometimes? So you have to consider that trade-off. We talked about how the marketing, operations, and finance team are all interrelated. This is important when it comes to the theory of the systems approach. The idea that in an organization, you've got various subsystems, and that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? That by coming together and working together fluidly, that you can achieve the highest goals you have for your company, and that the overall objectives of the organization take precedence over maybe the marketing team's individual subsystem worth of objectives, right? Marketing team has so many metrics, they're not meeting them, but by spending more on their budget than they were expecting to, you're making more profit. Your operations team is working better, or by financing more promotions or projects, your operations team works better, more profitability overall. So that's why you look at financial reports and you look at the bottom line, literally the bottom line of net profit of the organization, not of any one department. Now that's broken out too, but because it's good to know if there's ways you can improve it, but you're looking at how the organization achieves its goals. Prioritizing is all about making sure that you look at where your high value products or services are, and you prioritize them. There's an idea known as the 80-20 rule, also the Pareto phenomenon. You'll see it this called back to later on in the textbook, and you'll see where that 80-20 comes from. But the general idea is that roughly 80% of your business is originating from 20% of your goods, right? You've got key items you sell the most of, right? You go to think of McDonald's, right? You've got your Big Macs and Quarter Pounders and cheeseburgers accounting for most of their sales. Maybe you throw chicken McNuggets in there too, right? But then you also have something like the filet of fish or occasionally the McRib. I don't really eat McDonald's much, by the way, but to give you an example of how you have a lot of items, but there's core items that account for most of the business. And then, so if it comes to a situation where you have to choose one or the other, you choose the one that's going to ultimately provide the most customer service or the most profit or the least costs. A few concerns we should be aware of when it comes to operations. The first of those is environmental concerns. There's sustainability to worry about. Can you not use up more resources than can come back and that do not harm human existence, right? You tear down all the trees, we have poor air quality, right? So a lot of businesses will now plant as many trees as they cut down, hopefully. It's important for the earth, and it's also more often used as a PR thing. You can claim that your company is, environmentally conscious, or that you're a green company. The biggest environmental concern right now in a lot of companies, or the one that's probably got the most attention to it, is disposable one-time use plastics, because if you are someone who has a recycling bin, you'll know that it says you can throw plastics in there. But do yourself a favor and look up how many plastics are actually recycled. Not more than 5% of them are recycled and used in any way. At least 95%, and maybe as high as 99% of them end up in the dump or in the ocean. They're not recycled. It is, you can't really melt it down and reuse it, because the energy expenditure to reuse a lot of plastics is more than the energy and cost to just make new ones. So you have all of this in the ocean and the garbage anyway. So that's one of them. Think of how many times you've heard of businesses pumping out wastewater into drinking water areas. You've got even the city of Detroit, right, not taking care of their pipes and water supply, and all the water is brown and rusted or worse in the suburbs of Detroit, right? So it does behoove us as individuals to try to hold companies accountable for that, and to not support companies that have these major environmental concerns over and over again, perhaps. So that is a risk of your company if you're not being environmentally conscious, that eventually there'll be enough outrage on social media that you'll be trending in the wrong way. And so there's it's a PR issue as much as it is a long-term issue for the planet. There's also a lot of ethical issues in operations, financial statements. If the word Enron means anything to you, right? Defrauding investors or manipulating financial statements, keeping your workers safe, your product safe. If you're an automobile manufacturer and you know that there's an issue with the brake system on your car, maybe you should do a recall before a bunch of people get killed. And that doesn't seem to be the case very often, as plenty of news articles you can find about that. Just hiring and firing worker ethics there. Are you hiring people because they're friends or family? Are you giving every applicant a fair chance at it? Are you firing workers for just cause or not? So a lot of ethical issues. If you're an operations manager, you have to, or you should. I guess you don't have to, as we've seen, but you should be conscious of, which is just trying to do the right thing. All right, that's chapter 1, and we'll see you on the next chapter. Thanks, everyone.